What's up, unretirees? Art Johnson here. And I'm going to take a little bit of a little side trip here that is going to explain a lot of stuff here for me. I'm exploring the use of my whole brain, my whole head, in order for us to be more creative, to be more innovative. Because right now, we need to think outside the box. We need to think differently if we're going to survive in this earth with all the politics that are going on. So I just want to just kind of follow up. I just did a video on Julia Cameron and the artist's way and, a spiritual path to higher creativity. And really, it brought in the idea of maybe there's a power that's greater than we are, a great creator that is helping guide our direction. And I believe in that kind of intuitively. And so I wanted to say how that worked and how that actually came out. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about a book that came out of winning a deal here with the Swedenborgian Church to do a kind of an interesting. It was actually it started out as a reading group for that book, but I'll just go ahead and talk about that. So I'm going to do a book review on Betty Edwards' book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. It'll make sense as I go into it. So stick with me, and here we go. So this is a book review of Betty Edwards' book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And my artist way calling, and this was a kind of a fortuitous event result. What happened was my wife gave me a copy of the Artist's Way book because she felt like I needed it. I felt like I needed to have some more power to do what I had to do in terms of starting this new business, New World Communications. So I read the book lightly as though reading chapters in yet another book and kind of put it on the shelf. However, then I started getting emails inviting me to participate in an Artist's Way book study group that I ignored at first. And I was more focused on landing a website deal in the e-storefront business than I was actually in going to a book reading group on this book that I hadn't really sunk deep into it, but it was interesting. But the third and last email I got from someone who had my email asked me, "Are you coming or not?" And this was an Artist's Way study group at the Stonehouse bookstore, which initially was in Kirkland. And bingo, I joined that Artist's Way book and walked into a nice, robust East storefront that ended up turned out to be the Stonehouse bookstore run by the Swedenborgian Church. And it was a really nice deal. And I needed that job right there. This was kind of right when I first began. But then the facilitator asked me to facilitate a session on drawing on the right side of the brain. I had a conversation with that, and I said, it might help some of your people think differently about creativity. And so he said, okay, I want you to do that, Art. So it's about this book that really moved me in my life kind of around the same time called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by a woman named Betty Edwards, who by now she's age 99. She was born in 1926, and this first edition was published in 1979. Um, and she's a teacher and best known for her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, first published then. She taught and did research at the California State University, Long Beach, until she retired in 1990. But here's another person navigating her unretired life. While there, she had even founded the Center for Educational Applications of Brain Hemisphere. And Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain has remained the dominant book on the subject used as a standard text in many art schools and has been translated and published in many foreign languages, including French, Spanish, German, Polish, Hungarian, and Chinese. And it's about 12 lessons that are 12 chapters here The preface of the book is a result of a 10-year search for a new method for teaching art to individuals of many ages and occupations. Her big question is if drawing is as easy and as pleasurable as it always seemed to me, why is it that most of my students find learning to draw so difficult? And lesson one, she talked about drawing and the art of bicycle riding. And she really said, you can't really teach anyone and just tell them how to ride a bicycle. You might get on the bicycle and show how you're balancing, and then their body kind of learns how to do the balance, and you can do this. And that got to be thinking about, well, what's going on in my head? What's going on in my brain here to have that happen? And she noticed also when she was trying to explain, teach drawing to people, um, when she was actually creating stuff, she's looking at the drawing. She couldn't talk. She would stop talking. So that meant that there must have been some shifting going on inside of her brain that it would cut off the verbalization and had to just kind of look at the work there. And so that got her interested. And she then started to say, well, look, let me study deeper about my head, my brain. And there's a left side and a right side. And it so happens that the right side of the brain sees a different picture. And she figured out ways to get people to to lean more on their right side of the brain, had to shift. Now, one of the things that is interesting because of the culture and just because of the way we're raised where the left side, which is analytical and logical, um, is dominant. It dominates the creative artistic side. And that's really interesting because I've always thought about, this inner calling with me. We talked about the creative calling in another book that we just reviewed, and that society conventionally says, hey, you're going to starve as an artist if you try to be an artist. You need to just, toe the line and think like everybody else and be normal. And she said, no, she learned that in order to teach people how to draw, they had to shift and start using the right side of their brain. And so she had an experiment where she had a drawing. I ordered the book. By the way, my old book is falling apart, so I can't show you. But she showed some before and after pictures of people who were, first of all, trying to draw with what they thought was drawing was about, kind of with the other side of their brain, with the left side of their brain, and then she got them to flip. Got them to flip that over. She had a drawing and she turned it upside down, which forced their analytical thing to stop looking at just what a nose, think about what a nose looks like. Instead, she said, draw just where the lines intersect and look at all the empty space. And so she then goes through there's a chapter about how she had that kind of as a natural thing as she was growing up, even from 8 years old. And and then she talked about getting around the symbolic system and meeting the edges and the contours. That's what I was talking about, and using that other side of your brain. And she says, you can just see the contours. Don't worry about all the logic. Stop your mind. Just look at what's there and look at where the edges and the contours intersect. And you can start to perceive the space that the subject has and how that space is broken up. And there are positive aspects of looking at that. And she goes through branching out in all directions. And it's a perspective in new mode. What I'm trying to do here with you is to look at your brain. You got to think outside the box today. If you're going to, if you can't think differently, you won't get the same results. But if there's some way that you can go into a new frame of mind that can be really neat. When I was actually teaching this workshop, there was a woman, I was just explaining what this, how was this going to work. And then I had this picture and I turned it upside down and had her, I said, now I just want you to go and draw that picture. She was all freaked out. She was a math student and she had never created anything. So she was immediately intimidated. She was actually felt like I was going to hurt her in some way. I had to say, trust me. I said, I think you're going to find some really joy in doing this. So she calmed down and she just started doing that. And a big smile came over her face, like, oh my, I discovered another part of myself that I didn't know. And I love this. This was so much fun. And so, there's a place for this. And the reason why I'm not just, I suggest you read this book, not only just maybe to learn how to draw, but to learn how to think, how to experience that shift, the shift in your consciousness that actually has a higher dimension here. It looks at the whole reality of the world. We'll talk about that in another book we'll cover. And it made portrait drawing with ease and moving into a third dimension. And she just talks about shading and drawing the shading and all that. And this is a highly respected book. I'm giving it to you to have you think differently. And you may apply this in other ways. I'm applying it in business to think more creatively myself. So that's how that works. And so then the last chapter is the Zen of drawing and drawing out the artist from within. And this really goes back to that Julia Cameron that talk about your inner artist and bringing it out. And your inner artist is that part that really uses of your brain that uses the right side. Interesting. And she wants to say, use both. You're going to be logical, but you also need to see this big picture here that comes from looking at the whole thing and how that kind of comes together. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here. Uh, I'm really interested in what's on your mind. I hope that you don't think I'm totally crazy by suggesting that you take a look in this, you dive into this book. But I found it was really helpful to me, freeing up that, and it was helpful to me, kind of related to how I thought one way, and there was only one way I could sell and develop businesses. But there was another way that I had this inner calling to me. And it said, Johnson, check this out. And it really has helped me. It's helped me creatively to come up with new ideas. And almost it's an infinite supply of ideas that when you apply them in a business framework, you can actually grow business with that. I'm gonna top on that in a little bit. But when I look at all these other how-to courses or whatever or books, they're all talking about this technology and that technology, but the substance, the stuff that's in your heart, in your head, and that you want to do, and you need to reach and touch people where they need to be touched in their heart and their head. This could be a really good exercise for you to learn to use another part of your brain to do that and connect and hope that I'm connecting with you here because I really like that. If you want to know more about me, um, I'd love to connect with you. You can call or text me at 206-920-8067. You can email me at support@newworldcom.com. You can visit our website at newworldcom.com and make some comments here. You can also go to my YouTube channel called Navigating Your Unretired Life. That's what I'm really focused on to help people, 65 plus people who um, seeing open up a whole new avenue of possibility for you as you are figuring out what you want to do next in your life. It could be making and starting a business or working for someone else or taking a hobby up or finally painting or sculpting or whatever that is. But really kind of going deeper within yourself because that's a whole nother side of you in terms of human potential if you haven't explored that creative side here. So thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you.